Good evening once again, esteemed listeners. I'm Olumide Okunmakinde, and I gladly present to you a continuation, or better still, let's say a second phase of a presentation on Oduduwa. A presentation to the Yoruba people of the homeland and diaspora on Oduduwa in the light of metaphorical history of nature. We concluded the first session on a note that it's a step in the right direction for any willing institution or conglomeration of interested institutions is to move to acquire and document all Yoruba legends of creation across Yoruba land and the diaspora. And this, as stated, should not exclude creation legends of the Benin Kingdom. Now, this is the second session, and we're starting with a further consolidation of the scientific essence of Oduduwa, based on selected details of Ese Oduifa Osaogunda. The scientific interpretation of Oduduwa in relation to physical sciences, or physical science. The scientific interpretation of Oduduwa in relation to physical science, to physical sciences is further consolidated by corresponding legends. Having arrived at scientific terms of Oduduwa in respect of interpreting our physical universe, by virtue of directional indications of force, we must necessarily ask further questions in respect of prospects of further horizontal and vertical extensions of vibrations into an infinitum that is referred to as space. At this juncture, we must necessarily migrate to another functional deific manifestation of the Creator, Olodumare, as a being who created everything in heaven and on earth on the design and template of harmony. This deific being and name, well entrenched in details of Ese Oduifa Osaogunda, is known as Alashuwada. Alashuwada Tikisun, the Lord of Harmony who never sleeps. Some mythical propositions from Osaogunda, which consolidate the scientific essence of verses from Ofumeji on Oduduwa, shall be extracted for brief analysis. According to Osaogunda, Ashuwadaye, Ashuwada ile, iri tuwidi lafidali aye, iri tuwidi lafidaye labudaile. These lines, respectively, is drawn from the Ayajo Alashuwada. Now, these lines, respectively, may be interpreted in the English language to read, the world of forms was created on a template of harmony. The heavens were created on the template of harmony. The earth on which we tread was created on a template of harmony. Dews pouring lightly and pouring lightly is the form by which the world was molded. The earth world of forms, in unison with the heavens, present an imagery of harmony of the planet Earth with the entire complex of the universe, where it is stated that which is translated in English language to mean dews pouring lightly and pouring lightly is the form by which the world was molded. We must necessarily revert to other legends of Oduduwa, apart from that which derives from Ofumeji in pursuit of common essence in context. In the various Yoruba myths of creation, the snail shell, at dispersion of its content by Orunmila and Oduduwa, evokes an imagery of scattering particles into space to make up the Earth's cross form at variance, but in unison with the waters, which covered the surface of the space axis allocated for the Earth world's creation. The snail base of Earth's particles is a useful object of reliance for scientific interpretation of our world, wherein we deem the dews referred to as Irituwili to be an indication of the atomic base of matter. Listen again. The snail base of Earth particles is a useful object of reliance for scientific interpretation of our world, wherein we deem the dews referred to as iri, to be an indication of the atomic base of matter. The first or primary contact of atoms from the snail shell is the air element of space, and which is indicative of material interaction with wave. After a primary interaction with waves, a secondary contact is presumed to be made with the water element of space in the process of resettling into solid form, a phenomenon which is indicative of material interaction in density. Exploring the principle of determining empirical value of mythology and abstract perceptions of cultural phenomena by analysis under the concept of metaphorical history of nature. The examined physical and living snails unveil pure chemistry in a combination of solid and liquid material substances. In this regard, it is suggested that the snail itself is akin to a molecule which is scientifically defined as a group of atoms that are bonded together and which represents the smallest fundamental unit of a chemical compound. Wherein we examine the snail in pure chemistry, in the combination of solid and liquid material substances, the snail itself becomes an object of nature which may provide humans with knowledge of common factors and denominators of genetic structures of not only man, but all creatures. All creatures. By restricting such quest to man, the above stated quest is also bound to be aided by research examination of not just the dark complexioned snail, but also the light albino complexioned snail, which is generally called Ignorisha in the Yoruba Ishesi tradition. This is essential as a result of skin color distinction in the human race. We have dark-skinned and light-skinned. Humans are made from, in legends, Judeo-Christian, a lot of legends, humans are made from the dust. And now in Ifa legend, we know that the dust originates from the primeval snail shells. And now in nature, we find that there are two variations of snails. There's a light one, very albino, light flesh snails, and dark flesh snails. I hope you understand better. Now, the creation myth where Oduduwa brought the snail shell to create the earth is an embodiment of scientific details encoded in metaphorical history of nature. In the said legend, after the earth was created, the first animal to tread upon it was a chameleon, known as Alagemo in Yoruba language. This creature, interestingly, is a microspect of the prehistoric creature called dinosaur in Western scientific legends. This conceptual similitude is quite startling. At this juncture, references to issues of atomic and molecular interest driven by cosmological essence of corpus details from Osaogunda makes it absolutely necessary to revert to the interpretation of Ogbaragada for expansive scientific interpretation of Oduduwa in relation to cosmology and quantum theory. It should be noted that cosmology is a branch of astronomy which deals with the origins and evolution of the universe. It is also defined by the United States National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, as a scientific study of the large-scale properties of the universe as a whole. In this dimension of scientific interpretation of Oduduwa, the Big Bang Theory and ideas of infinite universal expansion are principal conceptions to be attended to in the course of discussion. The statement of Baragada cast divination for Odu when Odu was going to create all forms in existence indicates three principal factors to consider for analysis. These are Ogbaragada, Odu, and Iwa, respectively. These are interpreted to mean space and fields in physics. Yes, space and fields in physics. Computation program for material form and the manifest universe of forms. So, what is the Big Bang Theory? This was first suggested in the 1920s by Belgian priest Georges Lemaitre. He suggested that the universe began from a single primordial atom, according to studies by Michael Greshko and the National Geographic team, as published on the National Geographic website. The theory was born of the observation that other galaxies are moving away from ours at great speed in all directions, as if they had been propelled by an ancient explosive force. In further reference to the Big Bang phenomenon from another, I think it was from elsewhere, it's physics.org or something, phys.org website. It is stated that questions relating to how the universe was created has remained a puzzle to philosophers and scholars since the beginning of time, and that the consensus among scientists, astronomers, and cosmologists is that the universe was created in a massive explosion that created not only the majority of matter, but the physical laws that govern the ever-expanding cosmos. From the foregoing, it becomes imperative, based on the Baconian charge on the most important aim of philosophy in evolving new methods of interpreting our universe, to contribute to efforts of philosophers, scientists, astronomers, and cosmologists from the perspective of Yoruba culture, precisely from Oduduwa mythology or Oduduwa worldview. This expectedly comes through the designation of a conceptual identity of mythology as the metaphorical history of nature, wherein indicators of empirical reality guide data interpretation by the identification of metaphorical prisms and evolving metaforms of thought. Prisms, as used in this regard, is in accordance with the definitive similitude and parallelist construct of geometry. In Oduduwa mythology, the snail, Igmi, is akin to a primordial molecule moved by a force, Orunmila Oduduwa, to expand atomically. Hence, the snail may be deemed to be a metaphorical prism of the molecular base and atomic spectra of the universe within an infinite universal field called Ogbaragada. Sometime in the year 2002, I carried out an experiment. Sometime in the year 2002 at the Obafemolo University in Ile-Ife, at about 6:45 in the morning, right at the vertex of the second leg staircase of the Humanities Block 1 building leading directly to the Philosophy Departmental Floor 1, at a position precisely opposite room 1 and room 205, I carried out simulations of Orunmila and Oduduwa's acts of dispersing the Earth's component in the snail into space for observation. For each dispersion, there was a consistent light sound, very light. The snail shell was compared to the entire Earth in size, and it was assumed that the volume of sound at the dispersion of the Earth's creation was definitely expected to be of more heavy, intense, and much more louder magnitude. At that juncture, the Big Bang theory of creation took a semblance of Oduduwa creation myth in need of subjection to the interpretative course of metaphorical history of nature. There was movement of earth matter in all directions. Some headed southwards with indications of settling on the floor, some disappeared into the air with indications of transformation of forms and expansion by tides of the wind that indicate the essence of waves. And you see, it means that's an indicator of expansion. It keeps expanding, keeps blowing, the wind keeps blowing it, and there is a transformation in the atomic construct by interaction with the wind or waves, some sort of atomic or molecular evolution, whichever. As for the particles that headed towards settling on the ground, they were deemed to be metaphorical prisms of Alashuada, mythic position in Osaogunda, that is, dews pouring and pouring lightly, is the form by which the earth world was molded. As for those which headed in all dimensions from the snail shell and propelling force position, they were deemed to be a metaphorical prism of the idea that suggests a possible infinitude in expansion of the material universe within an infinite field of Baragada. In the course of preceding years, and for interpretation purposes, The observations at Earth of the Earth matter dispersion simulations warranted strong attention to an Oduduwa myth narrated by Akinshola Akiwowo, a late Babalawo Ifa and professor of sociology and anthropology. During a private discussion session with him in 2005, he narrated the myth of primordial emergence of light, Elagbo, which is completely different from the myth of creation of light by spoken words, Oyela. This time as narrated by Babalawo Ifa Peter Fatomilola some years ago. Ela means the breaking forth of light, and Bo is an onomatopic definition of an explosive sound. Ela, Bo. And this emerged from Omara, which was defined or stated by Akiwo to be the eastern hemisphere of the cosmos. This burst, according to Akiwo's narrative, was an emergence of the primordial fire, which is herein deemed or presumed to be the sun. In Western esoteric science, the Western hemisphere is the abode of water. This phenomenon correlates with the Oduduwa creation myths involving the snail, because the dispersion from the snail shell settled on waters. It is thus presumed that the Western position serves as a complementary guide to further and improved interpretation of Ifa creation myth. The Eastern Hemisphere is the abode of the sun's emergence. Hence, the West and Eastern cosmic phenomena in relation to the myth of Earth's creation and the emergence of light by explosion induced an idea of spatial dichotomy for the attention of cosmological studies. The dichotomy is deemed to exist in a unified field, herein again referred to as Ogbaragada, of matter dispersed from the snail and the light that bursts forth, both engage in the activity of motion defined in speed to cover distance in a common space and a unified course of time. The engagements are interpreted by radiation and waves of highly probable variations that are possibly determined by corresponding or discordant forces of the cosmic hemispheres. It is quite interesting that according to Albert Einstein, three quantities or qualities are required in order to describe the mechanics of the physical universe. And these are time, distance, and mass, wherein both Oduduwa legends of creation of the material world and the emergence of light are enjoined. More light is shed on the correspondence with the Big Bang theory and quantum theory or mechanics. Quantum mechanics is the theoretical basis of modern physics that explains the nature and behavior of matter and energy, or matter and light. On the atomic and subatomic level, it is noted from details derived from Britannica.com that the behavior of matter and radiation on the atomic scale often seems peculiar, and the consequences of quantum theory are difficult to understand and to believe. In view of the aforementioned position, there may actually be a way out of the difficulty from the Oduduwa legends of creation of the material world from the snail and the emergence of light, Elagbo, from two opposing directions. Atomic reaction or behavior and evolution may be strongly indicated in the collision and counter-interaction between matter from the Western cosmic hemisphere and radiation from the Eastern cosmic hemisphere. In this regard, the point of principal impact is presumed to be the central pole, which was earlier referred to as Ariniokmoitown. It may be the place of molecular division into forms and the emergence of atomic variations. A presumed transformation force field for the manifestation of intrinsic binary evolution, which is suggested and triggered by the evolutionary evolution of the 16 fields from Ejiogbe to Ofumeji. Yeah, these are 16 Odus. And then, in extension, Ogbeyaku to Ofunse, in extensive interpretation of the light creation myth, direct impact on understanding astronomical phenomena cannot be ruled out. It is important to note that in astronomy, the International Astronomical Union designates 88 constellations of stars. These are roughly based on the traditional Greek constellations. According to details from the IAU website, the Greeks consolidated the earlier works of ancient Babylonians, Egyptians, and Assyrians. Generally, the 88 constellations are herein treated as a paradigm of the universe from the west-east perspective. At this juncture, a prospective paradigm of the universe and constellations from the Oduduwa perspective becomes a subject for necessary exploration in IFA exploratory research. The Odumerindilogun, that is the 16 Odus, are herein presented as a paradigm of the universe and a representation of the constellation order from Oduduwa perspective. Figure 88, when digits summed up in numerology, is 8 plus 8, which is 16. 16, when also digits summed, is 1 plus 6, which is 7. Even though they are different in paradigms, 88 and 16, they are united in a steady state of figure 7. These two different paradigms take a form which is akin to the yin-yang dualism concept in ancient Chinese philosophy. In this Chinese perspective, seemingly opposite forces are assumed to be complementary, interconnected, and interdependent in the natural world. Hence, while the already established order of 88 is a distinct essence, the presumed order of constellations from the Oduduwa perspective in the directions of us, or the principle of universal harmony, is also of distinct essence and must also be explored for this distinct essence. Primarily, from the Oduduwa perspective, the first 16 Odus are deemed to be in common with the 88 constellations at the steady state of figure 7. In this regard, both are presumed to possess high prospects of capacity for holding causal factors of the operative realms of causation in the natural world. The path of earthing this is a human consciousness that is aligned to figure 7 as a path of intelligence. In the Jewish Kabbalah, this path is known as the path of occult intelligence, a term which simply means causal intelligence. It's usually exaggerated. It's occult. It's just a simple thing. It means a term which simply means causal intelligence or capacity to understand causes of natural phenomena beyond the limitations of physical experience. From the 16 Odus evolved 240 sub-Odus called Amulus. Amulu Odu. 240. Digits summed in numerology is 2 plus 4 plus 0, that is 6. Figure 6 from the perspective of the Jewish Kabbalah, which links to the sun. It is thus suggested that the essences of the 240 Amulu Oduifa mutations may have indicators of the solar complex of the universe inherent in them. And this is expected to lead to improvement of ideas on light emanations in the universe. In the constructs of human mind and perception, the figure 6 indicates that the 240 Amulus are laden with keys to illumination. It is important to note that the 16 principal Odus and 240 mutations represent a duality on one side and a unity on another. In a united form of 256 Odus, they are an expansive universal colosseum, which are herein referred to as UC256 for the purpose of astronomy and space-related interests on one hand, and on another hand, for interest in metaphorical historical analysis of nature and the development of IFA code 192 of the Earth world. From the Oduduwa numerological perspective, the unity of the UC256 by digit summation is 256. 2 plus 5 plus 6, which is 13. 13 is 1 plus 3, which is equal to 4. This stands as an indicator of characteristic possibilities of the universe that may be experienced and observed in the course of seeking knowledge of existential truths. Both figures 13 and 4 are essential. They're also two paradigms. They're essential, and this present position is expected to be hope to be best informed for further interpretation and analysis by meanings of these two numbers in ancient Egyptian and Greek mythologies. Worthy of note is an observation that there is a tendency for Yoruba scholars to claim that the West adapted the bulk of ideas relied upon for scientific and philosophic developments from the Yoruba worldview without acknowledging origins. However, no matter how possible this may be, the current speaker does not subscribe to this sentiment because there is a concept of human consciousness derived from Asuada principle in Ifa, which indicates prospects of common multiple perception of natural phenomena that is characterized by variation in degrees of experience, perception, and expression. In this case, what the Yoruba must pursue is neither to lay claims against nor enter into competition with the West or the East, but independent philosophical development to the point of being validly and complementarily functional. This is the point where the Yoruba, positively and regeneratively, meets the world in the 21st century for the improvement of illumination in philosophy and science, and for the improvement of mankind in general. It is often said, no man is an island, and intercultural discourse is very essential. I'd like to, at this point, also refer to the chorus of a song titled Life for Rent by an American pop star, Dido. It says, if my life is for rent and I don't learn to buy, then I deserve nothing more than I get, and nothing I have is truly mine. We'll take a break before proceeding to the third session. Of course, the third session, which will commence with the issue of Oduduwa. It was also about Oduduwa. Now treat Oduduwa's snail as a symbol of sexuality and reproduction. Thank you.